Hello everyone. Today we're going to do a drawing, kind of a character study, using some of the skeletal models that we just did the comparative study from the older ancient indigenous skulls. And what I thought would be fun to do is do something kind of in the theme of drawings that date back all the way up through the Renaissance period, that are usually labeled as the concept of either ugliness or the grotesque. I don't think that they're actually really so much grotesque as they are just interesting studies in character. The way we'll begin today, we'll start off with an egg-shaped oval, and I'll do these in profile today so we can have a little bit more fun with the different angles and so forth. But just as usual, we always start off with a egg-shaped oval. And then kind of the concept here is, we'll add a little bit of the, maybe a rounded, elongated skull in here just for fun. And so one thing that's interesting is when you do these kind of character studies, it's the opposite of using idealized proportion. What we're going to do is kind of take the rules of idealized proportion and take them out of context and add a little bit of a creative element to them. Some things will still apply, but in general, the ideology behind the concept of using idealized proportion is we'll use those rules, but then we'll break the rules. It's really important that you first learn to master the rules and the elements of drawing before you begin to break them. And then your drawings will always be that much stronger and better when you know exactly how you're breaking the rules and why. So to begin with here, generally speaking, when you are drawing the egg-shaped oval, and you're going to do this in profile, if we find the middle portion here and we break this into 3 equal parts from here to the outside part, that's going to let us know where the eye is going to be placed. So we go 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, because remember, you don't want to put the eye out here right directly on the edge. So we're going to have it sunken in a little bit. And we also, it's important to note that the eye will be placed on the halfway. This will be the top, this is the bottom. I'm going to put the eye in here in the halfway point. And I'm also going to make this a little bit smaller. So it's a capital A turned on its side. And I want to have it kind of an older person that's sort of squinting, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Keeping in mind some of the, a couple of the skulls, if you remember, like the Aboriginal skull, it came out and had a real strong brow. So I'm going to add a really strong brow out here. We'll make this a male. And then I'm going to have the nose extending out. Remember, the Peruvian skull had a nose that came out. So I'm going to have it come out like this, but then I'm going to have it sink down. So the cartilaginous portion is coming a little bit more through here, and I'm just going to do a quick gesture. Then I'm going to, the Aboriginal mouth, if you remember, extended out. So I'm going to exaggerate extending this out, but I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than I normally would. And then we'll come in through here, and we'll go up a little bit. And not much of a lower lip here. We're just going to have it, maybe he's missing a few teeth on the lower, so we're going to do that. And then come in, and then extend the chin out just a little bit. And here, let's give him a little fleshy fold in the neck. And then we can have little fleshy folds come through here. And then the neck would come down in here. We have the back part of the mandible is going to, remember, come through here. And we'll have the ear goes behind the mandible, so it'd be somewhere up in this area. We'll add the detail later. We're just going to block in all the proportions and everything right now. And the rounded forehead here. And then we'll have the back of the head extended just a little bit, like with a tiny bit of cranial elongation. And we'll round it a little bit more and have it come in here. Just kind of a little misshapen. Then we'll have a thick fold in the back of the neck. Maybe another thick fold in here, and then something like that. And let's add the sternocleidomastoid muscle coming through here. So I have some nice rounder elements. Let's make the nose just a little bit more extended through here and back in there, a little bit larger in there, the nostril. And we can have a fleshy fold in the eye. A little bit of a crease through here to show the age. And the mouth kind of, a little bit of a smile maybe. A little bit of the cheek. And then we have the zygomatic bone in here. And the zygomatic arch would run through here. Edge of that temporal ridge through there. And we'll have some little creases through here and a little fleshy fold. Maybe a tiny hint of a lip in here, but a real thin lip. Actually, I'm gonna make that mouth a little longer. Let me just give it a little bit more character here. Come down in here and then go up. And then a little bit of a lip here. And then have the chin come out. And just round it a little bit there. You want to show a little edge of the mouth there. There. The nose go out more. A little crick in the nose. You can do a little crow's feet at the edge of the eye. Make this a little bit more pronounced. There we go. A little bit of this fleshy fold in here. And let's get a little bit more. I want to have the back of the mandible a little bit more pronounced in here. And then the fleshy part's going to come through here, showing a little bit more age. Sometimes the grotesque is just, instead of doing kind of younger beauty, sometimes it's just having a little bit of age involved, and really drawing older people is fantastic. That's where you get all the fun character stuff happening. And there's the cheekbone. And we want the lobe of the ear in here. And actually, let's have a little fun with this ear and show a little bit, make it a little bit more unusual shaped in here. This wraps through here. We have this little section. The auditory meatus would be in there. And then we have the helix and the antihelix portion. And that turning back in a little bit. And we have the temporalis in there. And then right in here would be the mastoid process. And then we want to have those folds of the neck. And the trapezius through there. And this comes down here to the clavicle. And that would be down in there. Sometimes we see this vein running across, or that fleshy fold in here. And the frontal bone extended up. So that's kind of our gesture here. And we kind of had that blocked in, so let's go ahead and do a little bit of shading here. So let me clean up a couple of little things here, just because I want to have light in there. So that top plane, make that a little neater. It's really important that you get all the early detail stuff worked out real well. And then it's nice to lighten things up and gradually start to shade it. So we'll go ahead and shade this one from the beginning most of the way through. I won't do a time lapse on this one today. So it'll be a little longer, but you get to see the whole process. So I like to start with a no. Remember, it's really important when you're shading to not allow light to be on the edges. So even though, and I'm gonna have light coming from above and from this side. So everything on this side plane is gonna have a little bit of a tone. So I'm gonna add a light tone through here. Everything that goes underneath is gonna fall into shadow. So the bottom portion of the nose, and I'm not putting my shadow, the darkest portion, all the way on the edge. It's a little bit higher up. So the core shadow is through here. I want to have a cast shadow in a darker area inside the nostril. And I want to make sure I put a light tone, and it has to be light, on the top of the nose so that this light remains within the form. I don't want any light on the edge of the form. So I'm going to go ahead actually right now, just so you can see how I do this. And I'm going to go ahead and put a very soft light all the way up here on the edge. I don't want any light on the edge. I want all of the light to remain within the form. And I'll clean this up and make it more precise here as we move along. But just for now, I want to go ahead and put that tone on all of this, all the way through. A little bit of light on the chin there. And I can make some touch-ups and corrections later on if I want. And then inside the mouth on the lower lip, we're gonna have a bit of a cast shadow. So I want it a little bit darker through there. A little bit of a tone through here. The edge, the side plane of the nostril needs a tone. Cast shadow underneath again in here. Then this fleshy fold that runs along the side is going to have a core shadow with reflected light. So it's a little bit lighter in there. And then this little bit of indentation there. It's going to be a little bit darker through here at the end of the mouth. And I want to have a little bit of tone because I want the light to be in here, so I want that to go around. So there's a little bit of a tone in there. The lower lip coming through here is going to have a tiny bit of a tone. The bottom section of the mandible, all of this underneath the neck is going to fall into shadow. So I'm going to just very quickly put a tone, and I'll go back in and clean that up in a bit. The mandible, this bottom section here, we have core shadow with reflected light. This is the cheekbone. Remember, this is the zygomatic bone, so there's a shelf in here, so it's a little darker here that comes up toward the bottom of the eye. And we want to make sure we get that, have a tone because it goes under. And this comes down and it's going to connect. Remember that bottom part of the between the maxilla and the mandible? There's a little bit of a tone through here. And in the eye, here we have the eye cavities. The eye sits inside of that cavity. So I'm going to have core shadow through there with reflected light. And then right here, we're going to have a fleshy fold with light hitting on top through there. Fleshy fold here with the upper eyelid, and we have the eye. Capital letter A, remember that. Turned on its side. Then the bottom section of the eyelid is going to have a little bit of a tone. The side plane of the nose coming up through here, all of that has a tone. So when you think of all those elements of shading, they all apply, but in different ways depending on the anatomical structure of the actual head. So you want to make sure you get all of those in here. So now we have this temporal ridge, and we want to show that we know there's a side plane. There's a bit of a plane that comes through here, and all of this is going to go under through here so that eye fits into the shadow. And let's put a bit of a cast shadow in here, and core shadow above with reflected light so we know it goes back. And then all of this back portion of the head is going to have a soft tone. And then we'll get into the shading the specifics so you can accentuate some of the bone structure that we know exists. But let's just get a tone over all of this first. So all of this is going to pretty much fall into shadow because the light's coming from this way, so everything goes back. And then we have right here with this the temporalis muscle, we have the top part here of the parietal bone. Gonna have that, and the occipital bone is right back in here, so we're gonna have a turn on that. The mastoid process is gonna have a tone through right in here. This is where the sternocleidomastoid muscle connects. We have this vein that runs across. It's more pronounced usually on a male than a female, but not always. And this is the masseter muscle. It's the large muscle that goes across the mandible that enables us to chew. Zygomatic bone connecting to the temporal bone. And all of this has a light tone. Put just a quick tone here on the temporalis muscle. All of that probably is going to fall into shadow. All of this, the trapezius muscle is going to have a tone. And we'll do a little bit of work here in the ear. So this top portion of the ear will have some light on it. Then we're going to have a little bit of a tone in there. A little bit of a tone in here. And we have that little dark area in there. And then where the auditory meatus is, the ear canal is going to always have a darker section in there. And this is going to wrap through. And then the bottom of the lobe has a bit of a tone. The edge of this plane has a tone. There's always a cast shadow underneath the lobe and behind the back of the mandible. So we want to make sure we always get that in there. And it falls a little bit in here on the neck. And then we have sternocleidomastoid muscle. I want to have that come through here. Let's have the fleshy folds. Let's go ahead and put this muscle, and then let's have a tone here where this wraps the sterno, or the trapezius, let's have that tone on that. And this fleshy fold is going to come, let's have it kind of come out through here. So we have core shadow and reflected light. Same here, a little bit of cast shadow in here from this fold. Then we come through here. And now we can start to come up here into the occipital bone. And let's have the core shadow in from the edge, core shadow in through here. And we want to make sure we connect these shadows so that it all flows around. The top portion of the parietal might have a little cast shadow or a core shadow in the back there, and we want to connect it to this part. Now we'll connect it to the back of the temporalis muscle. So we can slowly start to blend and see this come together. Connect this through here. And then the forehead, frontal bone of the forehead, we're going to start to connect up into here. Set the eye in here a little bit further, so change the angle of this a little bit. Light in there. A little bit of light in here. Now we can get that little cast shadow through here. The cast shadow in the nostril, and we want that to come softer but connect to the form of the upper lip. And there might be a couple of creases in here because of age. So let's try to show a few of these folds. We don't need to put all of them in, but let's put in a few. And then a little bit of texture into the lower lip, cast shadow. So a little bit of a cast shadow from the upper lip into the lower lip in there. And then the chin has a core shadow with reflected light. And we want to continue that down toward this fleshy area. And let's have this be a little bit more flowing through there. So we'll have this come there, another little fold through here, and then down. So let's show this little fleshy fold in the neck. make sure that we have, even though there might be a fleshy fold here, it still needs to fall under into shadow. So we're going to put a little bit of tone. We know that this fleshy fold falls over the mandible, but we still need to have an indication of the mandible underneath. And the cheekbone should be a little darker now. We can slowly start to make some of these areas a little more pronounced. Same with the side plane of the nose, right through here. We want to make that a little more pronounced, so it's a distinct side plane. Let's get this eye, the pupil and the iris a little darker. A little bit of crow's feet. Show a little bit of plane. There's a little bit of a shadow on the top there. Zygomatic bone coming through here is a little darker as it approaches the ear. And where we have this fold of the ear, it's kind of older and a little bit folded over, so we want to have tone in there. And there's this little section here, the lobe, top portion of the lobe. Lightness just a little bit through here. Remember, this is going to go behind. Show a little bit of light in here. Bit of light through there. So here's the back of the mandible. All of that's going to have a tone. All of this is now going to fall into shadow where it goes underneath. The clavicle. Back of the sternocleidomastoid muscle. So we'll have a core shadow. I want to make that a little bit more pronounced. And the vein that comes through. And then the front portion here of the trapezius. Do a little bit better job blending here with the core shadow. Let's try to get that a little bit more natural through here. Okay, so this is going to come here. And it's going to go up, and you want it to wrap over the muscle, this little fold, and then we're going to, even the smallest areas still have core shadow and reflected light, so we're going to add that to this fold. And then this is going to come out and up and then down a little bit, and then the back of the trapezius. So this portion will have a cast shadow. We have core shadow through here, core shadow through here, a little bit of reflected light there in the back, and then trapezius we have core shadow coming out through here, so we're going to blend that. There might be a little cast shadow from that fold onto this area, from that fold onto this area. And then we'll let this kind of fade away. We're not going to worry about putting in all the detail here. And then we kind of rounded this. Another pencil here. So I want to enhance that back portion here of the occipital bone. So what we've done here is we've taken different skeletal structures that we've looked at over the past couple of weeks, and we've combined them together here to create this portrait of an older person. So we took a little bit of the concept of the elongated skulls. Let's darken this plane here. A little bit of the brow of the Aboriginal skull, the mouth of the Aboriginal skull. We have kind of the rocker jaw without the indentation of the Polynesian skull. And that's when it starts getting fun, when you can start taking all these different things that exist in nature and combining them to do these unusual portraits that some people would classify as grotesque heads, but they're really just fantastic character studies. They're some of the most fun things in art, is to do things that are a little bit out of the norm and really kind of have fun playing with them. And so now it's just a matter of going in and really kind of trying to shade things so they have a nice flow, the nice sense of light. And that part is just a matter of a good deal of patience. Kind of get all these little folds. Mandible can have a little bit of light through there. And the top section of this nose will have a highlight. We'll have a bit of light up in here in a couple of places. We'll add the highlights last. But try to get it all worked out, as much of it worked out as I can here, before I add the highlights. I have all that in shadow. I'm gonna have core shadow through here, and reflected light. Get a little bit of tone up here on the top of the nose. A little bit more cast shadow underneath in here. And side plane of the nose. I want the highlight to be up in here. On the edge of the bone, on the nasal bone right there, we'll have a highlight, and then there's always a highlight at the tip of the nose. So I want to make sure I have that set up so I can do that. And then I want to make sure I have this cast shadow underneath a little bit more carefully done. And then you want it to make sure it gets softer as it moves away. And I'm going to put a little bit of a darker tone here on the edge because I want the mouth to wrap around. Try to not have it be flat. Same here on the chin. I want that to extend out. And make that just a little neater. And this fold of the neck I want it to come under a little bit, but all of this, remember, all of that has to fall in shadow. And then the sternocleidomastoid muscle, the light's going to be in the middle of the muscle. It's like a large rope. So this, and it's wider up here at the top because it inserts, or actually doesn't insert it, its origin is from the mastoid process. And this part of the back section of the ear is going to cast a little bit of shadow onto the skull of the back portion of the head, the neurocranium. And let's have that connect through here. And there's probably going to be a few little fleshy folds coming down here because the person's a little older. So let's add a few of these. They come up through here. And there's this portion of the head may have a little bit darker tone. And a little bit of light here. A little bit of light in there. Let's try to get that. And clean that up and then go put it back in. So now we have a soft tone on the edge so that it wraps around, but I don't want to have the line that I placed in for the structure to be too dark, so I want it to blend a little more carefully here. And then the top of the temporalis muscle will have a little bit of light on it. Right in this here, the temporalis muscle is through here, so we're gonna have a little bit of light. And a little bit of light through here. And the back portion here has a tone. Make sure I connect those. And then where this cast shadow from the wrinkle is, there, or the core shadow reflected light, there needs to be a soft tone that comes out of the crease. And that's the cast shadow, and it gets softer as it moves away. So same here, a little bit of a tone on the top, because the light wouldn't be directly on the edge of that, it would be slightly away. And then the sternocleidomastoid muscle now is getting a little bit stronger. And then this muscle coming through here is a little stronger. I want this fleshy fold to continue through. You want to see a little bit of the mandible, but you also want it to see that the skin is kind of running down over it. So this is kind of like knowing where the underlying structure is, anatomical structure, and then applying the fleshy folds on top. So helps to know the underlying skeletal structure, the osteology of the head. Then you also need to know the muscle structure of the head. But then in addition to that, you have to study nature and see how the skin falls across the écorché of the head. So you're combining all elements of the study of artistic anatomy with nature. I want to there we go. Now I'll put the reflected light back in and the cast shadow. And let's just decrease the cast shadow between the lips a little bit. Make him kind of a happy guy. Now we'll add a little bit of the highlight. Well, let's clean that up. Fix a couple things first. Make that nostril a little bit, just a little larger. And the shadow under the eye a little more pronounced. Cheekbone a little more pronounced. So there'd be a highlight at the tip of the nose. Don't want to overdo it. Top part of the nostril has a highlight. This little fleshy area up in here is going to have a little light through it. And that little area. A little bit of highlight here on the lower lip and the chin. A couple of the top of the right here, the top of the cheekbone, the lower lid. There's a little bit of light on the wet portion of the eye, and right in there, a little highlight. A little bit on the top of the lid. A couple of highlights in here in the folds. Let me lighten that just a little bit here again. So this portion is going to have a pretty strong highlight through there. And then the temporal ridge, the forehead, up here on this upper part of the frontal bone, and lightly connects. But the core of the light's going to be up here. A little bit of highlight up in here. There'll be a little bit of a highlight through here. Top of the ear is going to have a highlight. A little bit of light in there. Here, the lobe. That portion of the ear has a bit of light. A little bit on the masseter. A little bit on this vein. Sternocleidomastoid muscle. The upper and lower section, and it splits into two portions. A little bit of light on that clavicle, a little bit, just a hint coming through these fleshy areas. A little bit of light on the top portion. A little bit of light here on the trapezius. Have a little light here in the back, that little area there. And just a little bit more tone here to put that in the cavity a little bit more. So here we combined a variety of ancient skulls into what could be a realistic interpretation of an individual. It could even be living today. So this is where it starts getting fun, when you can really start to study different aspects of anatomy and individuals around you. I love going out to, whenever you're out in public, whether it's a restaurant or just going grocery shopping or whatever, and when you're standing in line, sitting at a table at a restaurant, anywhere, you can just start looking at all the people around you and studying all their individual characteristics or different character traits. Some are related to different ethnic groups, some are related to different ages, all that sort of thing. And it's really, and then you can take all those home with you and turn them into your own personal expressions. That's one of the most fun parts of doing this sort of thing. And it's all this great character that you come up with. So I'm actually gonna just round that just a tiny bit more. And I'll probably lighten that a little bit, and the lower lip a little bit. Make that a little more subtle. Put a softer tone. Through there. And you can keep playing with these and fixing it. And when you come up with new stuff, sometimes it takes a while to get things just how you like them. So it takes a little bit of playing around. You don't want to get in a big rush. Take your time to get it just the way you like. And I'll probably stop the video portion here pretty quickly, but I may go ahead and work on this, you know, another hour or more, making some changes, altering some things, fixing things that may not have realized that were kind of bothering me, and trying to finish it. So you know, it takes a while to do this sort of thing. Not something that you can just knock out right away. You can get to a certain point pretty quickly, but then trying to get it just exactly how you want it takes a lot longer. So in fact, I see a few things I would like to kind of fix right now. I want to intensify this top portion here, the shadow, going back and connecting it so it has a little bit more of a flow right through here. And that's kind of along that temporal combination of the temporal ridge, the suture line, and also the temporalis muscle. And I want to connect it up here to the temporal ridge. And then I want to have that ear fall a little bit more in shadow, so it goes behind this little portion of the ear. And a little darker tone in there, a little darker tone in here. Make sure I get a little bit more reflected light under here, a little bit more light up there. And this bottom portion of the lip, I want to have a bit of tone underneath there, with a little more light on top, a hint of it. And then that needs a little bit of a highlight right through there with a couple of folds. So I can kind of give him a little bit more of a smile there. There you go. With age comes wisdom. He's a happy guy. And I want to make that cast shadow in there a little darker. Okay, so Grotesque Head. The extended mouth, reminiscent of the Aboriginal skull. The strong brow, reminiscent of the Aboriginal skull. We have a bit of the rocker jaw, where it's convex this way, reminiscent of the Polynesian skull. We have a hint of cranial elongation, a little bit similar to that of the cranial elongation that we saw on the Peruvian skull, the ancient Peruvian skulls, and a really strong, pronounced zygomatic bone, reminiscent of maybe the American Indian skull. So we took excerpts of a whole bunch of different skulls that we've been looking at lately, and we combined them into one in kind of an unusual fashion. And this is the concept behind the grotesque heads, is really just great character study. And then to me, it poses an interesting question. If you take your time and you try to draw something that what some people might deem as ugly in terms of the subject and so forth, but if it's beautifully drawn and beautifully shaded and beautifully executed, is it technically grotesque? So that always makes an interesting thing, because sometimes things can be thought of as ugly or grotesque, but if they're beautifully done, are they really grotesque, or are they beautiful? So that's been something that people have thought about and pondered for centuries. What exactly is ugliness? What exactly is beauty? And everybody's interpretation of ugliness and beauty is different as well. What we might deem as ugly in one portion of our culture, somebody else in another part of the world in their culture might consider that to be beautiful. So in the spirit of that, this is a drawing of a grotesque head. I hope you had enjoyed this and have fun doing your own interpretations. Thank you.